Dan Lanning's a terrible recruiter. He's lost it. It's all falling apart. Yeah, I'm completely kidding. Or it'll be okay. It'll be okay.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time. Once again for Locked On Ducks, I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Of course, what would the line be for pulling Dante Moore this year? That's an interesting question I'll explore on today's show. Nate Biddle is back. Oregon softball takes on UCLA. Jam-packed today. It's all brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Brian Smith, recruiting analyst and host of the Portal Podcast, is here to discuss Oregon in 2026. No other way to spin it, Brian. A couple days ago, not a good one for the Ducks. Now, maybe Richard Wesley winds up being a Duck after all. That's actually been my prediction all along. I think Wesley will wind up back at Oregon at some point in time. I hope that's the case because he's talented. Not guaranteeing that, of course. That's just my prediction there. But I look at the 2026 class and say, all right, Dan Lanning is not for a third year in a row going to rewrite the record book for Oregon high school recruiting rankings. And that's okay. It should still be a good class. They should still be able to get inside the top 10. I think June is going to be a really, really busy month. But some Oregon fans out there are in a little bit more of the panic, doom, and gloom mindset. And I'm like, okay, my concern level right now is about a 4.5 because, yeah, they haven't had an actual commit when you take Wesley out of the picture since February. But their visitor lineup for the summer is stacked.
Yeah, there's this thing called getting accustomed to success. Oregon fans have grown into a territory they're not used to and forgotten that other teams have scholarships as well. You know what? They also have NIL.
Whoa! I thought Oregon was the only school in the country using NIL, Brian.
There were rumors of that. It's false.
Yeah.
But there's also this thing called maybe a kid just doesn't want to go to Oregon. This is called blindness. Like every program has it when they go on a hot streak, especially with how Oregon recruited at the very tip top of the sport in terms of the 5-star kids. It's not always going to go your way. Then they lost Jared Curtis. They lost Jackson Cantwell, etc. Oh, God, we're not going to beat everybody by 50. You know, that's part of the world. Sometimes you got to actually win with 4 stars, Spencer. If you need to keep your flock in check, just remind them 4 stars are okay. It's not a bad thing. So, yeah, I'll make the prediction now. If Oregon doesn't finish with a top 10 class, I mean, I'll make Spencer wear Oregon State gear. That's what we'll do. That's what we'll do.
Where did you get the authority to make me put on Beaver gear if that didn't happen? I mean, I'm confident in Dan Lanning and the staff. I'm not rocking orange and black on this show.
Well, I didn't say you had to come on the show and do it. I mean, we could take photos and put them on Instagram. But anyway, like, they're not going to fall. Like, the worst would be like 12th or 13th if they missed on a couple of kids at the end. And that could happen. But this idea that the sky is falling, come on. It's a little overblown. And by the way, we're not even to June yet. The first major weekend is this weekend, and then there's the 6th, then there's the 13th, and then there's the 20th. There are 4 weekends. How many times do you think we're going to have ups and downs for Oregon and every other major college football program over the next month and a half? About 5 to 6? You know why? Because we're dealing with teenagers, and we're dealing with people looking to profit off teenagers too, handlers and all that stuff. There is no such thing as consistency. If you need consistency, badminton's a sport. Their recruiting's probably a lot easier to go. Go down that path. Football is not for you because it is a wild ride now. And I'm sorry, it's probably going to get wilder once that house settlement comes in too. Because the back half of this year, this is the only year it's ever going to happen. This will literally be the wildest year in recruiting. All the NIL money from the collectives getting spent now. But July 1st, barring something changing again, and we are talking about our government, which is totally corrupt and terrible, but yeah, they're not very good. That money comes in, that's going to get spent on the back end. So you might have some flips even beyond what we normally have in November and the first week of December. It is possible. So get a seatbelt if necessary or follow badminton. Either way, it's up to you. There it is.
I'm the host of Locked On Ducks, Brian. Seatbelt's the only option. I don't think Locked On Badminton is paying my rent.
Okay,
Just a thought.
Spencer is all in on the Ducks. He is all in on the Ducks. But yeah, like there's no such thing as smooth recruiting.
Yeah, and with Richard Wesley specifically, Brian, also important to remember, and part of the reason I think he'll still wind up back, and signing with Oregon. He's going to visit the Ducks first before he goes to Texas, Ohio State, and Texas A&M. Now, those are big-time programs. Those are heavy hitters. They've got plenty of NIL. You and I both suspect, not reporting, but we both suspect, NIL's playing a pretty significant factor here for Richard Wesley. You take that for whatever it's worth. But by no stretch is Oregon out of the Richard Wesley sweepstakes here. It's just, okay, they're going to have to go toe-to-toe with 3 other programs. And so far the 5 stars Oregon's gone after when other heavy hitters on the trail are in the mix hasn't always gone well. Yet, there are a lot of names out there. There's Jet Washington, the safety. There's Tyler Atkinson, the linebacker. Manuel Iheanacho, the offensive lineman. Oregon's not going to get all of them, but they're not going to miss all of them either. And by the way, they already have a 5-star committed in Kendra Harrison, the tight end. Don't forget.
Yeah, so if you get 1 a year, you're ahead of the curve. If you get 2, you're doing really well. Oregon's been doing better than 1. So that kind of goes back to my original point. Temper your enthusiasm about them always getting them, but if they don't, it's not the end of the world either. I mean, sometimes, the other schools, they offer scholarships. They have official visits. They have coaches. All kinds of things. It's crazy. Yeah, I know. So, Oregon it's up and down. Every school has had that. There were years that Nick Saban didn't finish with the number 2 class. Alabama was okay. It only happened a few times. But still, literally.
Yeah, literally. But again, you throw one that's not quite as good as the other ones into the fold, and as long as that doesn't become a regular thing, you're okay. Even if it were, if Oregon sat in the 7 to 10 range on a 5-year average, Brian, they would have 2 or 3 rosters in there that'd be good enough to win a national championship, especially with the portal.
That's what I mean. Like now, your goal is to not sign great players. It's not to develop them. It's to sign, develop, and keep them. The most important NIL money that Dan Lanning staff spends is to keep guys in UG. Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Georgia. Some of these teams have been really successful lately, all done that, and Oregon needs to be thrown into that mix as well. You're not winning unless you're keeping guys. Did you see a bunch of guys leave Texas? No, you'll lose 1 or 2 every year, but barring the kids that you didn't really care if they left, those programs keep their kids, and Oregon's doing that first. And secondarily, they're very selective with who they bring into the portal. Like Thieneman, you and I have talked about him at Texas and stuff. I'm sure that wasn't cheap because he does not suck. You've got to make those accounts. Okay, where do we need it? They're doing the right thing. So it's not just 5 stars out of high school. It's all the different things. One big box. And Oregon's conservatively a top 10 team in the nation at doing it, probably top 5 for roster management. So, they're not going anywhere. They're going to be this season upcoming. I don't think they're a top 5 team. This might be the only time they're not a top 5 team in the next 3 years because they just lost so many good players at key spots, quarterback in particular. But I still think they're top 10. If your worst year in a 3-year stretch is still top 10, but a lot of your fans, I read some of your stuff, like some of these people are not mentally stable. They're not.
Well,
they're not.
In their defense, Brian, it's Dan Lanning's 4th year chasing a national championship with Oregon. It's their 20th, 30th, 37th year. Like that's where that comes from. But you make a good point. Real quick before I get you out of here, Brian, I said yesterday on the show, if Oregon doesn't have any commits from what they currently have by June 15th, that's when my concern meter will jump up to like a 7 or an 8 on what this class will be. I don't think that's going to happen, which is why. But do you think that's a good barometer for Oregon fans that follow stuff closely. Like, if by the first 2 weeks of June, if that second weekend comes and goes and there are no new Ducks in the class, then we could maybe start to raise an alarm bell or two.
There's just almost no chance, because that means the May 30th, June 6th, and June 13th weekends were all unfruitful.
Yes.
What are the odds of that?
I'd say less than 5%.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's never zero. It's never zero, but my gut tells me less than 5%.
Just for the record, if you follow this at all, and if you don't, here's all you need to know. The extreme, vast majority of kids will commit on June 20th or later. This is the trend. The number of kids that I have to pre-record for at the last minute between June 20th and July 10th is going to be like 100 plus. It's insane.
Yep. That'll be a busy time. Brian Smith is always there to cover it. Longtime recruiting analyst, Portal Podcast, Locked on FSU as well. Great as always, my man. We're talking quarterbacks next. When aren't we talking quarterbacks here on the show? What would it take to pull Dante Moore? That is a great question I'm going to answer. First, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. And FanDuel is making it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And if you like college football, which you probably do if you listen to or watch this show, then you can bet on that right now, including things specific to Oregon, like their Big Ten championship odds, tied for second with Penn State behind Ohio State. National championship odds. Win total is 10.5, tied for the highest in all of college football. It's all over there. There's a wealth of information you can go explore at FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, I got an absolute banger of a mailbag question from Nick. Keep the questions coming. Send in takes for Spencer's scale of agreement, all that good stuff. YouTube comments, Twitter, become a Locked on Ducks insider, all ways to get your question answered here on the show. Nick, a question for you. What do you see being the line in which a quarterback change is made other than injury? I'm presuming, Nick is a frequent watcher of this show. You're in the same camp that I am. If you want me to do this in the other direction, by all means, we got all summer. But I'm presuming you're putting Dante Moore in as the starter, Austin Novosad as the backup, Luke Moga as the third string quarterback. So let's Joker style wind the clocks back 2 years, not 1 year. Joker only wound it back 1 year in the Dark Knight circa 2008, but in 2023, Dante Moore did not start the first 3 games. He started the next 3 games, and then he got benched, played a little bit more, and now he's at Oregon. So that 3-game stretch at UCLA, and that was a different circumstance. That was Chip Kelly as a head coach. That was a UCLA team that was good but not great. They, I think, finished 8-5 that year, winning a bowl game with Ethan Garbers as their quarterback. The stretch for which he was removed as a starting quarterback, it was a 3-game stretch in Pac-12 play, RIP. Dante Moore was indeed, once upon a time, a Pac-12 quarterback. Just think about that for a moment. Just going to let that hang out there. Anyway, all right, back to the question here. That stretch, he had 6 touchdowns. He had 3... Sorry. See, I'm thinking too optimistically here. In 3 games, he had 6 interceptions, 3 touchdowns, 3 pick sixes, and completed less than 50% of his passes. Now, again, that was for a UCLA team that, whether they admitted it or not, I think Chip Kelly realized it and got out of there as the head coach because he didn't want to be a head coach anymore. And he knew that, he just built his best team at UCLA this season prior with Dorian Thompson-Robinson in 2022. They started 6-0. They were ranked inside the top 10 when they came to Autzen Stadium, and Dan Lanning picked up one of the biggest early wins of his coaching career with the Ducks. That 2023 team, there was a little bit of a reset, and I think Chip Kelly realized this is going to take a while. I don't want to do this. I just want to coach ball. I say that to bring up that Oregon would not let it get that far. You would not have to see 3 straight games of 50% completion or less before you saw a change. I think after 2, because even though I certainly see Oregon as mildly resetting, Oregon's resetting is not the same as everybody else's. You know, you heard Brian and I see Oregon the same way this year. Obviously, I cover them more closely than he does, but we both see the Ducks as top 10 team, but in the 6 to 10 range more likely than the 1 to 5 range compared to everybody else in college football. But is it possible that could change? Yes, that could absolutely change in Oregon's favor, as I talked about earlier this week on the show. But I mentioned that to bring up that Dan Lanning and the staff are not going to wait. I don't think they're going to approach the season the way I would, which is let him make all the mistakes he can. But even then, if he does have a stretch like that where he's his 2023 self, which I don't expect for several reasons, but if that part of him showcases itself on the field, I'd want to see what you have with Austin Novosad in a game setting, 100%. But I don't think a 3-game stretch of that poor a play, certainly one bad game, isn't going to do it. I think if you had 2 games in a row where he's completing less than 50% of his passes and throwing more interceptions than touchdowns, that would be the worst Oregon quarterback play probably since Braxton Burmeister. That's how I think it would have to look and feel for the Ducks to make a change. I think there will be a solid amount of leash for Dante Moore as Oregon's starting quarterback. I think Novosad doesn't quite have the experience, but overall is a pretty high-end backup option. So if you need to just spell him for a little bit, like for example, Texas last year with Quinn Ewers at quarterback and Arch Manning waiting in the wings. It's finally Arch Manning's turn this season to start there for the Longhorns, which is one of the biggest stories in all of college football this year. Quinn Ewers was struggling. He was a veteran quarterback who had played at Texas for a year or 2 already, and he was struggling mightily. And Steve Sarkisian just pulled him for, I think, like 2 series in a game they were actively trying to win. I think it was the Georgia game. I'm not locked on Texas, so I don't remember specifically. But he pulled him for a couple series and then put Quinn Ewers back in to just reset his mind. Just get him out of the game and just shake it off. Shake it off. Arch is going to go run a couple series. We trust in what he's able to do. I could see that happening with Dante Moore. I could if things were to go poorly. But for there to be an outright change in the starting quarterback, it would have to look, and frankly, it might have to be a 3-game stretch. I don't know that even 2 would be enough for the coaching staff to make a move. I know they're not going to wait and let Dante Moore struggle for 5 games or 6 games before they put someone else in. But also think about this. What we have seen from Austin Novosad has been really good in all these spring game settings and whatnot. And I think that's great. And he's got the skills to be a starting quarterback in major college football one day. And not so hot take, perhaps, he'll be Baylor's starting quarterback in 2026. Just wait and see if that comes about. That's not an impossible situation. But if Dante Moore struggles for multiple weeks at a time, like let's say Oregon, beats Oklahoma State, but Dante Moore plays poorly, and it's just run game and defense carrying him. And then they go to Northwestern, and it doesn't look very good. And then Oregon State comes to town, and it starts to really look bad. If they still don't go to Novosad there, I think that'd tell you, number one, they believe in Dante Moore and are going to allow him to grow. And number 2, Novosad might not be as far along as we all think in our heads, because it is imaginary at this point when you're talking about what Novosad's potential actually is on the field. But a 3-game stretch where you go 3 touchdowns to 6 interceptions and half of those picks are 7 points for the other team. I think a 2-game stretch like that with sub 50% completion percentage on top of it in this offense, that would be the line. That would be the line where I'd say, okay, I think you got to at least get him out of there and get his head right, reset, put Novosad, do something else, because what you're doing here isn't working. Now, Will Stein's offense, I don't think allows for that. And when you go back and watch the struggles Dante Moore had, he shouldn't have been playing. Most true freshmen shouldn't at the quarterback position. He looked overwhelmed. The game was too fast, and his offensive line was terrible. That is the biggest difference. The biggest difference, more than the running backs or the receivers. No, he has better receivers and an overall, skill position group of guys around him than he had at UCLA. The gap between that UCLA O-line and what this year's Oregon offensive line should be the biggest noticeable difference. Because when you give him a clean pocket, dude can make special throws. He showed that in his brief time starting as a Bruin. But you got to give him that pocket pretty consistently. But it's a different offense, asking different things, better O-line. I don't expect him to have that stretch. But Nick, as far as off-season questions go, I don't think I've ever gotten one like that before. Fantastic. Well done. Speaking of fantastic, well done. Oregon softball is in the Women's College World Series. That starts later tonight. Getting you ready for that series against UCLA. And some good news in the transfer portal. All right, before I get to the softball breakdown, because that starts 9:30 Eastern time, Thursday night, tonight, as this show is dropping on ESPN2 against UCLA. Plenty of Bruin stock on today's show. Nate Biddle's returning to the Ducks. I'm going to have full thoughts on that because I have a lot of thoughts on that on tomorrow's show. So make sure you tune into that. But let's get ready for the softball series because, well, not series, the World Series, that is. Oregon has not been here since Melissa Lombardi took over. This is the first time they've gotten there since 2018. This is a big deal. I don't have to tell you. I hope I don't have to tell you that. And it's not just because Oregon's there and it's cool. Oregon is there. Tell me why they can't win. They are top 10 in the country, and there are only a couple teams that have this. In fielding percentage, Sinicki, the shortstop, is incredible. Absolutely incredible. Just an absolute dynamite glove at short. If you haven't seen the plays she's made this year, you've been missing out. But Oregon is top 10 in fielding, hitting, and pitching. Runs per game, ERA, defensive fielding percentage. Does that mean they're going to win it all? Not automatically. Can they get past UCLA? That's step number one. So here's how that happens. And I think these keys can apply to pretty much any game Oregon plays in this tournament. It's double elimination. So if they lose to UCLA, they're not out of it. The road to reaching the best of three championship series gets exceedingly difficult from there. But let's talk about the Bruins, who are the number 9 team or number 9 seed in the country. There was a bit of a playoff football familiarity with how the seeding went down. Oregon was the number 3 team at one point pretty late in the season. They got upset by Michigan in the Big Ten tournament, and then they were the number 16 seed despite being the Big Ten champions. I don't really get how all of that works. But UCLA, the number 9 seed in the Big Ten, incredibly, like Oregon, balanced team. So 2 names for you to know going into this game against the Bruins. RIP Pac-12 and Bill Walton as well, who I hope is smiling somewhere watching this game take place. You got to be careful with Megan Grant and Jordan Woolery. So those are the 2 most prominent power hitters for the Bruins. When you have bats up and down the lineup the way both of these teams do, and certainly Oregon can hit 1 through 9. I thought the broadcast crew did a good job in the Super Regional Series highlighting how strong this Ducks lineup is top to bottom and how the production doesn't just come from the top or the middle. Like, they can really hit anywhere 1 through 9, and that's a great thing to be able to say. UCLA certainly has a lot of that ability, but in these big games, Oregon is now 42-0 when they hit a home run, 10-8 when they don't. It might be 43-0 with the super regional games. But the way that Oregon has played offense this year, there's just something about having the home run ball. And I think it's because so many times those big flies are coming with runners on base, and you can shift the momentum. You can give your pitching staff just a lot of benefits there. You've got real sluggers on both sides of the diamond here, and I think you got to win the home run battle. I think that is key number one. If you give up 2 home runs, you better find a way to hit 3. If you only hit 1 and you give up 3, I think that's just asking so much of everything else with your team. You've got to at least be even, if not ahead, in the home run department, which then, of course, brings you to the pitching staff. And I think the staff, especially Lindsey Grine, who's been their best pitcher all year, she's thrown the most innings, has the second best ERA. She had a bit of a get-right game in Game 2 against Liberty in the Super Regional and was just phenomenal, retired 18 or 19 batters in a row at one point in that game. Now you're going back up against big-time competition. Not that Liberty wasn't good, of course they were. Oregon caught a break, and they've taken advantage of it, to their credit, to get themselves to the College World Series. That Liberty lineup does not have the same caliber of bats as what you have with a team like UCLA, or else those kids would probably be playing at a school like UCLA. And what they did against Texas A&M, you can't take it away from them. It wasn't cheap, it wasn't fake or anything like that, but certainly Oregon caught a break. So it's good that Lindsey Grine had a phenomenal outing, but now she's got to go and do it against UCLA. And when she has gone up against Power 4 competition in the last month and a half or so, it has not been the same level of outcome that we're accustomed to. And so I think settling down, and I do think there's something to the pressure of being there for the first time in 7 years. Oregon's got to settle into the game. If this game is 0-0, top of the third, I will take that every day of the week. I will have no complaints. The pitching staff has to find a way to settle in, because like this Oregon lineup, which certainly can get going against anybody in the country because they are deep, they are talented, they're experienced, they're all these sorts of things, but they have some really exciting young players as well, like Riley McCoy. They have got to be able, I think, to settle down and get accustomed to, okay, we're here in the College World Series. Like, they're the newer kid on the block. Melissa Lombardi hasn't been in this position before. UCLA has. And so I think that is a really, really important thing in this game. In addition to the home run battle, you got to get off to a solid start. Don't be playing from behind. Don't try and stage a comeback like you did against Stanford. That was great. It was amazing. That's not the formula you go for. And when you're going against a UCLA team with a team batting average of 344 on the year, you got to be able to settle in as a staff. So we'll see if they go with Elise Sokolsky or if they start with Lindsey Grine in the game. Those are mostly the 2 arms Oregon has used this year. Stacey Chambers has been a revelation, and man, has she been good. I'm fascinated to see how Coach Lombardi and her staff employ those 3 arms, because let's say you start with Sokolsky, but she gives up 2 in the first and 1 in the second. You think, okay, we need to have a new arm. Are you going to Lindsey Grine? Because what you have to keep in the back of your mind, and it's not as important in softball as it is in baseball, because pitchers can throw the next day, and it's not as big of a stress on their arm, is if Oregon wins this game, they will advance into the winners division of the bracket, and they will play the winner of Texas Tech, number 12 seed in the country, and Ole Miss, who won their regional but was not seeded. That game would be on Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern. If they lose on Thursday, they're still alive, but they play on Friday, 9:30 Eastern, against the loser of Texas Tech and Ole Miss. And Texas Tech has got the National Player of the Year. I think she's a pitcher, and they went out and invested a bunch of money into it. Good for them. Texas Tech's investing big time in college sports right now, and it's paying off in more ways than one. So that's the situation for the Ducks. Again, those 2 keys. The pitching staff has got to settle in, and you have to at least be even in the big fly department, or else you're just facing a major, major uphill battle in this game. But, I saw Scotty Scheffler talking recently about the Tour Championship and, what it means to go out there. And he said, look, we're not doing it for the money. Like, we, are out here to compete at the highest level And, we get gratification as professional golfers when you go out and you perform on the biggest stage, because to win, you have to be at your best in the biggest moments. That's what this comes down to. There's nothing really else to it. Oregon and UCLA, I think, are pretty evenly matched on paper. I bet if they play 10 times, nobody's winning more than 6. And so it's one game, 9. Let me double check that time. Let me double check the time, but I believe it was 9:30 Eastern on ESPN2. And I can't wait to watch. Hope they come out with a win, because you get in that losers bracket and every game's win or go home. That's asking a lot. But yeah, 6:30 Pacific time, ESPN2. Make sure you check it out. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. And hopefully on tomorrow's show, in addition to talking about Nate Biddle coming back to the Ducks and a potential transfer target Oregon's going after, I can talk about a softball victory too. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.